The practice of Vajrakilaya is based on the oral teachings given by Khenpo Namdrol Rinpoche at Kunzang Palyul Choling Poolsville, Maryland, USA in June 1995. Songayal Rinpoche in his foreword says, "The practice of Vajrakilaya blazes at the very heart of the ancient Vajrayana traditions of Tibet. The wrathful Heruka Vajrakilaya is a Yidam deity who embodies the enlightened activity of all the Buddhas, manifesting in an intensely wrathful yet compassionate form in order to subjugate the delusion and negativity that can arise as obstacles to the practice of Dharma. In fact, the practice of Vajrakilaya is famous in the Tibetan Buddhism as an exceptionally powerful method to remove obstacles, destroy the forces hostile to compassion, and purify the spiritual pollution so prevalent in this age. Throughout the history of the Dharma in Tibet, the greatest masters and siddhas of the ancient or Nyingma tradition have engaged in the Vajrakilaya practice. It has passed from Padmasambhava, Vimalamitra, Trisong Detsen, Yeshe Tsogyal, and Dorje Dujom, through great Terma revealers such as Ratna Lingpa, Jikme Lingpa, Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, Dujom Lingpa, and Lerab Lingpa, down to the great teachers of the present day. Yet Vajrakilaya is practiced by followers of all the Tibetan Buddhist traditions. It is a practice which has been central to the Sakya school, handed down since the time of Khon Lui Wangpo, a disciple of Padmasambhava. It is practiced in the Kagyi tradition, as well as the Gelugpa, and both the 13th Dalai Lama and His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama have treasured Vajrakilaya as their Yidam deity. Countless practitioners have attained realization through the power and blessing of Vajrakilaya. The subject matter of this book comes from the teachings of the vehicle of the unsurpassed secret mantra. In general, the Tantric teachings of secret mantra, considered the most important teachings of Indian Buddhism, all essentially agree regarding the highest realization of Buddhahood, which is their ultimate fruition. However, there exists a variety of traditions, and this is due to the different modes of teaching and emphases employed by the Buddha for addressing different faculties and inclinations among the disciples needing to be trained. In particular, there came to be two different traditions of the Tantric teachings in Tibet corresponding to the periods during which these teachings were translated. Those which were translated in the earlier period came to be known as the earlier propagation, or Nyingma, while those translated in the later period came to be known as the later propagation, or Sana. The Nyingma school of the earlier translations dates from the time of the Dharmaraja Songtsen Gampo and the great translator and creator of the Tibetan language, Thonmi Sambota, Khenpo Namdrol Rinpoche Pray. As you set out to listen to these teachings, I would like to invite you, first and foremost, to arouse in your minds what is known as Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, literally enlightenment mind, means that you are aspiring to attain the level of Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings who are as limitless as space. Inspired by this motivation to become enlightened for the sake of others, you should receive these teachings of the secret mantra and then practice them genuinely. This is how we understand bodhicitta. The origin of the Phurba Tantras in this world involved three methods: the initial mind-direct transmission of the victorious ones, the transmission through indication or signs of the Vidyadharas, and finally the transmission of the yoginis, which is by word of mouth. The lineage of the mind-direct transmission began with the Dharmakaya Samantabhadra. When Samantabhadra expresses himself as the form body or Rupakaya, he becomes the sixth lineage teacher, Samantabhadra, who pervades the other five lineages. This expression is in fact nothing other than the self-expression of the Buddha within the Akanista, pure realm. His retinue appears separately as the five male and female Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but from an absolute point of view, they remain as one single continuity with the mind of the Buddha. On those occasions when the sixth lineage teacher, Samantabhadra, teaches Dharma to this retinue, it is not through such means as words or sounds. Instead, teacher and retinue simply abide together with a single enlightened purpose without any divisions, and this is termed teaching the Dharma. The content of these teachings is exclusively the unsurpassed secret mantra and never the sutras or lower tantras. The retinue, primarily the Bodhisattvas Manjusri, Avalokitesvara, Vajrapani, and the five Sambhogakaya Buddhas, may appear from one point of view to be other than the teacher, yet their appearance in fact is merely provisional in order to elicit the teaching of the Dharma, and ultimately they are only the expression of the enlightened mind. Out of all the unsurpassed secret mantras, the 18 tantras of Mahayoga, and the 6,400,000 verses of the great perfection tantras of Dzogpa Chenpo are taught by the teacher Samantabhadra in the Akanistha pure realm in this way. The origin of the Vajrakilaya tantras. There are two explanations given of the origins of the Vajrakilaya tantras in our world according to the two divisions of the Mahayoga vehicle to which the Vajrakilaya traditions belong. The Tantra series or Gyude and the accomplishment or Sadhana series or Drupta. The explanation. According to the Tantra series, the origin of the Phurba Tantras in this world involved three methods. The initial mind-direct transmission of the victorious ones, the transmission through indication or signs of the Vidyadharas, and finally the transmission of the yogins, which is by word of mouth. The lineage of the mind-direct transmission began with the Dharmakaya Samantabhadra. When Samantabhadra expresses himself as the form body or Unpakaya, he becomes the sixth lineage teacher Samantabhadra, who pervades the other five lineages. This expression is in fact nothing other than the self-expression of the Buddha within the Akanistha pure realm. His retinue appears separately as the five male and female Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but from an absolute point of view they remain as one single continuity with the mind of the Buddha. On those occasions when the sixth lineage teacher Samantabhadra teaches Dharma to this retinue, it is not through such means as words or sounds. Instead, teacher and retinue simply abide together within a single enlightened purpose without any divisions, and this is termed teaching the Dharma. The content of these teachings is exclusively the unsurpassed secret mantra and never the sutras or lower tantras. The retinue, primarily the Bodhisattvas Manjusri, Avalokitesvara, Vajrapani, and the five Sambhogakaya Buddhas, may appear from one point of view to be other than the teacher, yet their appearance in fact is merely provisional in order to elicit the teaching of the Dharma, and ultimately they are only the expression of the enlightened mind. Out of all the unsurpassed secret mantras, the 18 tantras of Mahayoga and the 6,400,000 verses of the great perfection tantras of Dzogpa Chenpo are taught by the teacher Samantabhadra in the Akanistha pure realm in this way. The 18 tantras of Mahayoga can be correlated to the five-fold set of the enlightened body, speech, mind, noble qualities, and activity of the Buddha. Each category is subdivided into three and correlated to the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So that for the enlightened body, for example, there is a triad of the enlightened body of the enlightened body, the enlightened body of the enlightened speech, and the enlightened body of the enlightened mind. This same pattern is reproduced in the other four categories: speech, mind, noble qualities, and activity. The resulting 15 categories correspond to the first 15 tantras, while the remaining 3 tantras are termed general tantras, which are also divided to correspond with the triad of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. The Vajrakilaya Tantra belongs to the enlightened mind subcategory of the enlightened activity category, or in other words, the enlightened activity of the enlightened mind. This tantra is called the Vidyottama Tantra and has 100,000 sections, all on the subject of Vajrakilaya. The famous Guyagarbha Tantra is, on the other hand, classified as the general tantra of the enlightened mind. Now we will turn to the second transmission, the symbolic or sign transmission of the Vidyadharas. In general, the Bodhisattvas Manjusri, Vajrapani, and Avalokitesvara are responsible for disseminating the teachings of the unsurpassed tantras from the highest pure realm of Akanistha into the ordinary world system. This they do in 2 ways. One for human beings and one for non-human beings. Manjusri went to the realm of the gods to teach the gods, and particularly the god Drakten Chokkyong. Avalokitesvara went into the realm of the Naga serpent spirits, where he gave teachings primarily to the king of the Nagas, King Jokpo Nakpo, along with many others. Vajrapani principally taught the teachings to the Yaksha Kuntuzangpo, along with his retinue, in the Yaksha realm. This transmission takes place solely through the display of symbols and signs rather than discourse, and as a result the entire group of listeners in each realm attain enlightenment together. This is a brief summary of how the lineage was propagated in the realms of non-human beings. For both humans and non-Hutnans, the way the Tantras were first propagated in this world is as follows. 28 years after Lord Buddha Sakyamuni passed into Nirvana, 5 holy individuals of very special backgrounds from 5 different classes of sentient beings convened through their miraculous power on the peak of Mount Malaya. The peak is inaccessible by any other means. Of these 5, one was the king of the gods, Drakten Chokyong, one was the Naga king Yokpo, one was the Yaksha Kardadong, one was the Rakyasa Lodro Tapten, and one was a human being called Draim Drakpa. These 5 knew that since the Buddha had passed into Nirvana, the teaching was in decline, and so they prayed to the Buddhas of the 10 directions, lamenting from the depths of their hearts. All the Buddhas then came together in the form of Vajrapani, who appeared to the 5 and brought them all the teachings directly from the pure realm of Akanistha. Having collected every category and class of Tantra to be found in the Akanistha pure realm, he transmitted them to these 5 holy sages through symbolic indications. Lodro Tapten wrote all these teachings down on gold paper using lapis lazuli ink, and then hid them in space as a treasure. There were 7 different thoughts behind his actions. The sublime basis for the letters was gold paper. The sublime agent for writing them was molten lapis lazuli. The sublime vessel to contain them was a chest made of 5 precious materials. The sublime location was the sky, which is beyond destruction. The sublime protectors were the wisdom yakinis. The sublime master of the teachings was King Ja, and the sublime upholders of the lineage were his disciples, the fortunate ones who would maintain the tradition. Subsequently, the blessings of this transmission and concealment manifested directly in the 3rd lineage, the oral transmission lineage of individuals. This began when King Ja, the king of Zahor at the time, witnessed the miracle of the scriptures of the 18 Mahayoga Tantras descending onto the roof of his palace, along with a cubit-sized image of Vajrapani. It seems that these Tantras were probably the ones written down by Lodro Tapten. At the same time, King Ja also had 7 very auspicious dreams. He then prayed to the image of Vajrapani, and so naturally came to realize the meaning of the chapter entitled The Chapter of Seeing Vajrasattva's Face, from the Mahayoga Tantras. When he subsequently evoked Vajrasattva in contemplation, Vajrasattva actually appeared to him and blessed King Ja's body, speech and mind with his own enlightened body, speech and mind, thereby granting him the Tantric transmissions. King Ja gave these teachings to Kukuraja, who transmitted them to King Indrabodhi, who passed them on to Simharaja, who in turn transmitted them to the Princess Gomadevi. Each one of these masters had hundreds of thousands of disciples who accomplished the teachings they received. All of them, without exception, achieved the state of deathlessness. Without even needing to leave their bodies behind, they simply took to space and passed directly into the pure realms as Vidyadharas, accomplishing the highest level of realization. In time, these teachings came to the great Orgyan Khenpo Padmasambhava, the extraordinary master Vimalamitra, and the great master Silamanju, each one of whom received and transmitted all 18 classes of the Mahayoga Tantras. According to Jamgon Kongtrul, Padmasambhava also received these teachings directly from King Ja himself. All of these one masters became one with the wisdom mind of the Yidam deity, in the essence of the integration of space and wisdom, thereby attaining the level of Vidyadhara. Now, with regard to these 3 lineages, if we consider the Vajrakilaya Tantras alone, according to the teaching of Lopon Langlab, there are some 37 self-sufficient volumes on the Ferber cycle, and 16 more concise, shorter volumes. The meaning of self-sufficient here is that these tantras contain the entire range of relevant topics, without needing to be supplemented by any other tantric sources. The Mahayoga Tantras are inconceivably numerous, and the corpus of 18 represents those which have been principally transmitted in this world of ours. Out of this vast range of Mahayoga Tantras, Vajrakilaya belongs, as we saw, to the cycle of enlightened activity. Guru Padmasambhava received the authorizing mandate to become the main lineage holder of this Vajrakilaya Tantra, along with all its tantras, scriptures and precepts. When we look at the great Vajra Guru Padmasambhava, From the point of view of definitive truth, he is originally and primordially enlightened and indivisible from Vajrakilaya, from whom he has never been separate. However, for the benefit of living beings needing to be trained, he went through the actions of practicing Vajrakilaya, experiencing direct visions of Vajrakilaya as an external presence, receiving the teachings of the Vajrakilaya Tantra from the deity himself, being introduced to space and wisdom through Vajrakilaya's enlightened mind, and finally coming to know all objects of knowledge without impediment. In this way, he received the entire transmission of Vajrakilaya directly from Vajrakilaya himself. However, to maintain the gradual transmission of the lineage, he also received the empowerment and transmission of the Tantra from the Vajra master Prabhahasti. Guru Padmasambhava was invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, and he was still on the road to central Tibet when he was obliged there and then to manifest. Tibet, when he was obliged there and then to manifest as Vajrakilaya, to subjugate the intractable gods and demons of the country and bind them by oath. He compelled them to act thereafter as supporters of the propagation of the Dharma in Tibet. Once he had arrived in central Tibet, he blessed the site where the king had been trying to build Tibet's first Buddhist temple, and so finally Samye Monastery was able to be constructed. The first instructions he then gave to his 25 heart disciples were teachings of the unsurpassed secret mantrayana on vajrakillaya practice, to enable them to remove obstacles to their practice of Buddha Dharma. To some he gave concise teachings, and to others expansive ones, but all concerned the practice of Vajrakilaya. This is how there came to be three traditions which stemmed from Padmasambhava's original transmission of the Vajrakilaya instructions. They are referred to as the tradition of the king, Trisong Detsen, the tradition of Jomo, his Tibetan consort, Yeshe Tsogyal, and the tradition of Nanam Dorje Dujom, one of the 25 disciples. The names of these traditions refer to the individual through whom Padmasambhava originally transmitted the particular Vajrakilaya teaching. If we relate these three traditions to the Terma treasures in which they were subsequently revealed in Tibet, the tradition of the king was revealed by Jigme Lingpa in his Vajrakilaya treasure revelation. The tradition of Jomo is found in the treasure buried by Yeshe Tsogyal and later discovered by Ratna Lingpa. Finally, the Vajrakilaya termas discovered by the treasure revealer Turtan Lerab Lingpa belong to the tradition of Nanam. In fact, they were buried by Nanam Dorje Dujom, who later reincarnated as Lerab Lingpa and rediscovered them. So the Gurkukma Vajrakilaya treasure of Khenpo Jigme Phuntsok also belongs to this tradition of Nanam Dorje Dujom. This is how these three traditions, all of which are valid and all of which belong to the treasure tradition, stem from those initial teachings on Vajrakilaya conferred by Padmasambhava in Tibet. As termas, they were buried, to be discovered later by the Turtans at the appropriate time and in accordance with the indications given in the prophecies. This completes our account of the origin of the Vajrakilaya Tantras in this world according to the Tantra series. In the Akanistha pure realm, the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra manifested as the 8 Heruka teachers who remained inseparable from the Buddha. They taught the teachings of the sadhanas of Kagya to a perfectly pure retinue of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who were no different from them, by means of Vajra words, meaning through their wisdom mind or beyond words. The keeper of the secrets, known as Vajradharma, then compiled all of these enlightened transmissions and miraculously wrote them down in script, placing them inside a jeweled casket, which he took to the Dechet Sekpa stupa. In the presence of the great Dakini Lekhi Wangmo and an ocean of other Dakinis, they were buried as a treasure inside the holy stupa, the site of which is in present-day India, and the Dakinis themselves were appointed as their guardian. Subsequently, the 8 great Vajra masters, Humkara, Manjusrimitra, Nagarjuna, Padmasambhava, Dhanasamskirta, Vimalamitra, Rambuguya, and Santigarbha all convened at the appropriate time in the terrifying charnel ground known as the Cool Grove, and together became absorbed in a state of one-pointed contemplation. As a result, the treasure. Caskets inside the stupa containing the 8 Heruka transmissions began to emit rays of light, and countless rainbows and other astonishing signs appeared to the masters gathered there. Then the dakinis and powerful spirits who were circumambulating the stupa in their role as guardians of the treasure became visible to them on account of the master's clairvoyance. The masters realized that all of this indicated the presence in the stupa of instructions that could either devastate the entire world through wrathful mantras or grant the highest satisfaction, both in terms of mundane goals and ultimate enlightenment. By focusing their wisdom, they realized that the time had come to give consecrated substances such as torma, rakta, medicinal substances and so on to the spirits and dakinis and bind them with an oath to bring them under the power of the teachings. So the dakinis approached them and asked what commands they required them to fulfill. The Vajra masters replied that they were required to bring out the treasure caskets that were contained within the great stupa and to hand these caskets over to them. One of the caskets was made of silver and it contained all the teachings of the Tantra of the enlightened mind manifestation of Yangdak Heruka. The dakinis brought this out and handed it over to the Vajra master Humkara. Then they brought out an iron casket containing all the teachings on the Tantra of the enlightened body manifestation of Manjusri, which they gave to Manjusri Mitra. A copper casket containing the teachings of the Tantra of the enlightened speech of Padma was given to Nagarjuna. A turquoise casket containing the teachings of the Tantra of the Furba Vajrakilaya was given to the Vajra master, Padmasambhava. A gold casket containing the teachings of Khenpo Heruka was given to Vimalamitra. A rhinoceros horn casket containing instructions for accomplishing the teachings of the Tantra of the Mamos was given to Dhanasamskirta. An agate casket inside which lay the teachings of the Tantra of offering and praise for worldly deities was handed to Rambuguya. Finally, a Z-stone casket containing the teachings of the Tantra of wrathful mantras was brought out and given to Santigarbha. There was one additional casket made from 5 different precious materials and studded with precious gems, within which were 8 divisions corresponding to the 8 kagye. Unlike the other teachings, which were for the separate practice of each individual deity, these teachings were for the joint integrated practice of all 8 simultaneously. This casket was put in the center of the 8 Vajra masters without being given to anyone in particular. The teachings that came from this chest were the Kagye Deshek Deepa, the gathering of the Sugatas of Kagye. When each one of these Vajra masters had received his particular chest, he opened it and extracted the teachings. However, none of them were able to open the final casket containing the 8-sectioned Kagye Deshek Dupa. So for 7 days, the Vajra masters dwelt together in meditative equipoise and prayed one-pointedly to the dakinis to assist them. As a result, when the 7 days had elapsed, the seal of the last casket sprang free and the lid opened of its own accord. This is how they were able to extract the teachings of Kagye Deshek Dupa. Another historical account records how, since this receptacle could not be opened by the 8 Vajra masters, it was placed back inside the Dechet Sekpa Stupa and buried once again. Then at a later date, Guru Padmasambhava returned to open the seal and reveal it. When he extracted the Kagye Deshek Dupa from the casket, the dakinis guarding the treasure asked Padmasambhava to practice these teachings and transmit them to others. According to yet another account, the Vajrakilaya teachings were brought out and passed by the dakinis into the hands of the Vajra master, Prabhahasti, who then later transmitted them to Guru Padmasambhava. However, the casket of 5 precious substances containing the Kagye Deshek Dupa was given directly by the dakinis to the Vajra Guru Padmasambhava. This concludes the explanation of how the Vajrakilaya Tantras came into our world. In Tibet, Vajrakilaya was practiced by all schools Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, and Gelug, but the Tantras and lineages of Vajrakilaya had their origins solely in the Nyingma tradition. This brings us to a discussion of how Vajrakilaya, the deity of enlightened activity, originated in this world. His origin, in the sense of his first manifestation to those needing to be trained, has 3 aspects: the one to be tamed, the tamer, and the way in which the taming takes place. The one to be tamed, generally speaking, those needing to be tamed, refers to all sentient beings, but the being we will discuss here is the rudra known as black liberation. Now, in general, there are three ways of explaining rudras. The first identifies them as the wrathful herukas in the Akanistha pure realm, who appear standing on top of the bodies of different beings in order to subjugate them. However, these are in fact Sambhogakaya manifestations, despite having the name Rudra applied to them. The second is as emanations emitted by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Nirmanakaya manifestations who appear in the fields of those needing training, in accordance with that particular field. In addition to emanations like Sakyamuni, there are also those who are outwardly disruptive, such as the disorderly monks emanated by Sakyamuni so that their transgressions could be used as examples of how not to act, and so become the basis for the rules of monastic discipline. However, they are essentially pure emanations. These two types of Rudra can therefore actually become objects of refuge, and they are not relevant here. It is the third type that are relevant. I shall explain this type as it is presented in very similar fashion within two tantras, the Nirvana Tantra of Vajrakilaya and the Root Tantra of the Wrathful Vajra. The third type of Rudra is essentially negative and is a tangible being reborn in a malignant form as a result of broken tantric commitments in previous lives. Such a Rudra is usually accompanied by a retinue of other malignant beings, and as a group their main activity is to cause obstacles to the propagation of the teachings of the secret mantrayana. This is why practitioners of the unsurpassed secret mantras perform a practice called slaying Rudra, Rudra Dralwa, prior to embarking on any important practice, such as a great accomplishment ceremony or drupchen. Through this practice of slaying and liberating the Rudra, both the Rudra and its retinue are naturally liberated, so ensuring that they cannot create obstacles. Then our practice of secret mantra will be free from any malignant force, and auspicious circumstances will be securely established from the very outset. The principal cause for being reborn as a Rudra is allowing the secret mantra samaya to deteriorate, and here I would like to recount the story of the origin of a certain such Rudra. The age in which we live now is called the Aeon of Excellent Fortune. 12,006 great eons ago, there was an eon named Kunko Complete Array and a world system called Manifest Joy. It was the age in which the teachings were propagated in this world system by the teacher Buddha Akhyobhya, just as they are propagated in this era by the teacher Buddha Sakyamuni. At that time then, there lived a monk named Thubka Shionu, who was teaching the secret mantrayana. Next door to him lived a wealthy family called Kukaya, in which there was one son called Black Liberation, who had a servant named Denpak. At one point, Black Liberation went with its servant to visit Thubka Shionu, and with great respect they posed Hei-chan this question: "Is there a path to liberation where you enjoy everything just as you feel like? We heard that there was one, but is that really true?" The monk replied, "Oh yes, it's true all right, such teaching does exist." Black Liberation and his servants were overjoyed, and they both took ordination and joined the path of Dharma. Black Liberation kept on requesting Thubka Shionu to give them instructions that would allow someone to utilize and enjoy the objects of desire in order to achieve liberation. So the monk taught them that if someone has realized the fundamental nature of reality, then even if they kill, steal, lie, commit adultery, or engage in sexual misconduct, they can still achieve liberation. From the worldly point of view, of course, these are non-virtues which will cause you to be bound to samsara. But if you have realized the fundamental nature of mind, then, even if you commit such actions, liberation can be attained. However, Black Liberation was not so bright, and when he heard this teaching, he failed to understand that you have to realize the nature of mind before being able to behave in such a way. Instead, he misunderstood the teaching to mean that by simply killing, stealing, and so on, a person could achieve liberation. Although he was the son of the leader of the community, his mind had the potential to accumulate very negative non-virtue. But his servant Denpak was much sharper and had the kind of capacity and keenness of sensibility to realize the inner meaning of secret mantra and the correct way of practicing the esoteric path. Although outwardly he was only a servant, inwardly he became a pure practitioner of secret mantra. So Black Liberation and Denpak found that their respective views and conduct contradicted one another, and they kept on getting into conflict and debate. Finally, they went to ask their teacher about their disagreements and disputes. When they asked Thubka Shionu who was right regarding the view and conduct, he replied that Denpak was right and black liberation was wrong. Black liberation became very angry with his teacher and flew into a fit of rage. He felt that the least their teacher could have said was that they were both right or they were both wrong. But to say that one was right and the other wrong was completely unacceptable. His anger caused him to develop an incorrect view of his teacher. Now black liberation's father was the ruler of the village, and encouraged by his son, he seized the servant Denpak and the monk Subjugation, humiliated them publicly, and then exiled them from the community. This left black liberation, who had a completely incorrect understanding of the unsurpassed secret path, thinking that he could engage in union and in slaying whenever he pleased. So he ventured out into the charnel grounds and began eating human flesh and flaying the skin and wearing it as clothing. The wild inhabitants of the charnel grounds, carnivorous beasts, wild boars, flesh-eating birds and the like became his retinue, whom he led in killing all who got in his way. He summoned a great number of prostitutes whom he raped and tortured. This went on for a long time, with the result that he accumulated a tremendous amount of negative karma. So, when black liberation died, he was immediately reborn in the Vajra hell. Only those who have broken their secret mantra Samaya take rebirth in that particular hell. Black liberation's negative karma accumulated, and as it unfolded, it gradually diminished. As it did, he began to move in and out of the hell realms each time he was reborn. He transitioned from the Vajra hell into the 8 hot hells. And then he would alternate between rebirth in one of the 8 hot hells and then one of the 8 cold hells. This continued for 12,000 great kalpas. It is the nature of karma that eventually resolves itself, whether it is virtuous or non-virtuous. Thus, when his ripening karma for being born in hell realms was depleted, he was finally able to be reborn as a preta, and for 6 great kalpas he endured the suffering of the pretas. After the karma for being born as a preta had ripened and was exhausted, he was then reborn as a rakshasa or cannibal demon in the form of rudra, black liberation. He became a powerful rakshasa because in his previous apprenticeship with Subjugation, he had constantly visualized himself as different wrathful deities from the secret Mantrayana and recited their wrathful mantras. Although his practices were not authentic generation stage tantric practices, they still generated powerful karma. As a result, he became the controller of the 12 lower levels of the form realm and the desire realm. He was such an all-powerful ruler that there was not a single being in any of those realms who could inflict any harm on him, and yet all the while he was busy killing them, eating them, and doing them all the harm he could. This is the history of Rudra, and completes the account of the one to be tamed. It is generally said that if you know the origins and history of worldly gods and demons, they will no longer be able to harm you. The same holds true for a Rudra. You are beyond their malignant effects once you understand the history of their origins and development. That is why I have gone into some detail regarding the origins and history of this Rudra. In general, a Rudra focuses specifically on trying to harm those who are practicing the unsurpassed secret mantra. They are his main targets. Now, the kind of beings that create obstacles for the teachings and practitioners of the secret Mantrayana are usually called damsi, and are basically those who have, in the past, allowed their tantric samayas to deteriorate. The foremost among these are the Rudras, while the lesser ones are reborn as their retinue. This kind of Rudra, along with its retinue, needs to be subjugated, but to try to subjugate a Rudra like this via peaceful means would be quite fruitless. The vehicles based on the Asvaltras do not teach any methods viable for subjugating beings such as these, and so their subjugation cannot be addressed in the context of the Swatrayana. However, on the path of the unsurpassed secret mantra, when there is a being that needs to be subjugated, there are a variety of methods offered to perform this subjugation. In general, secret mantras are characterized by a plurality of methods that fit just about any situation. The particular method that is used to subjugate Rudras is called dralwa, or liberating. The tamer. Returning to the story of Rudra black liberation, it was at this point that, at the urging of the Heruka of enlightened activity, the Buddhas of the 3 times in the Akanistha pure realm came to realize that here was a disastrous situation and an extremely disruptive being. They convened a special meeting to discuss exactly how to deal with the Rudra who was responsible. Realizing that he could not be dealt with effectively by peaceful means, they agreed that the circumstances demanded a special wrathful manifestation. So through their great compassion, these supreme Buddhas emanated countless wrathful deities such as Hayagriva, the glorious horse-necked one, to overcome Rudra for the sake of all living beings. This is what some accounts tell us, but here I will explain the account given in the Vajrakilaya Tantras, which describes how the tamer of Rudra black liberation was none other than Vajrakilaya. The method of taming, generally speaking, it is understood to be an invariable and definite fact that when the Buddhas and deities manifest, these manifestations in terms of their own essence are exclusively pure. However, when they display their form bodies, or rupakilaya, within the various fields of living beings needing to be tamed, these manifestations are quite variable and indeterminate in terms of how they are experienced by those living beings. There are different peaceful and wrathful manifestations, different constellations of major and minor marks, and different deities such as the Kagye deities, Vajrakilaya, Gongdui, and so on. In general, all these manifestations of the form bodies are the expression of the Buddha's enlightened awareness, manifesting directly out of the expanse of reality, the Dharmadhatu. Yet when they interact with various living beings, these manifestations appear in a huge variety of ways to match the individual perspectives held by these beings, and so they are at times extremely pleasing and at other times extremely disruptive. For example, in the Nyingma tradition, the Buddhas manifest in each of the 6 realms of existence in the forms that correspond to the beings in those realms. In the Hell realm, they manifest in the form of the King of Hell, Yamantaka, to tame hell beings. In the Hungry Ghost realm, they manifest as the King of Hungry Ghosts, Blazing Mouth. In the Animal realm, they manifest as the Lion. In the Human realm as Sakyamuni. In the Demigod realm, they manifest as the King of Demigods, Thakzangri. And in the God realm, they manifest as Landra, Lord of the Gods. However, in terms of practice, we generally visualize all of these 6 Ime nations in a pleasing form, Simha to the Buddha Sakyamuni, since this is what we are accustomed to as human beings. This is why Thangka painters generally represent them in this manner, rather than in the forms that they actually adopt and appear into the beings of each realm, for instance, as a hell being in the hells. Take 2 examples. When we meditate on the assembly of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, these 6 Buddhas appear within that Manjuala as Nirmakaya Buddhas, in human form. Again, in the Namch treasure tradition, Avalokitesvara alone manifests in a wide variety of forms, not simply in the familiar one with 4 arms, holding the lotus and so on. So in the Tantras, it is said that the Buddha's form manifestations are indeterminate and cannot be precisely defined, since they appear in accordance with the perspectives and dispositions of the beings needing to be tamed. In this particular instance, the wisdom mind of all the Buddhas combined to manifest another form identical to Rudra black liberation in order to tame him. In the form of this Rudra that they had emanated, they engaged in sexual union with his female consort, Krodiswari, who thought all along this was her own Rudra. As a result of their union, the Hindu of the Buddha's Rudra emanation in the form of a hum came to rest on top of the white lunar mandala in her womb. In addition, this emanated Rudra subjugated the 10 attendant protectors of the directions, who acted as Rudra's bodyguards and brought them under his power. Then he simply vanished by dissolving into the expanse of reality. Subsequently, the 10 protectors of the directions and their female consorts began having offspring, which displayed ominous signs, such as being born with pigs' heads and bears' heads. Then Krodiswari, impregnated by the hum that the emanation had left inside her, gave birth to Vajrakilaya. He emerged from her womb with 3 faces, 6 arms, and indestructible Vajra wings, and at once began to proclaim Kilaya over and over again. When the real Rudra saw all of this, and in particular Vajrakilaya emerging from his consort's womb, he became terror-stricken and fell unconscious, as did all the other members of his retinue. As they lost consciousness, they all started vomiting blood. When he recovered, Rudra summoned his retinue and they all lamented in loud voices. Then Rudra manifested in a form just like Vajrakilaya himself, with 3 faces and 6 arms, and assembled troops of demons that showered weapons on Vajrakilaya. In response, Vajrakilaya manifested in a form with 9 heads and 18 ANLLs, while from every single pore in his body he began emanating miniature Kilayas with their own 9 heads and 18 arms. They burst out in every direction, all uttering wrathful mantras, and finally the real Rudra and his retinue were left speechless in defeat. However, Rudra then Kani at him yet again in a new form with 9 heads and 18 arms. In response, Vajrakilaya manifested a form with 1,000 heads and arms, along with countless eyes, while still continuing to emanate the miniature 9-headed Vajrakilayas from the pores of his skin. In addition, he emanated 10 male and female wrathful Herukas, who suppressed the 10 protectors of the directions by standing on top of them. Then the sound of the mantra Hasayara Haritanaya resounded and emerged from the crown of Vajrakilaya's head, entered the crown of Rudra's head, and dissolved into him. The potency of this mantra was such that Rudra was separated from all the gods who had been helping him, and he was left quite alone and without assistance. Meanwhile, Vajrakilaya continued to emanate 5 other types of mantras from his body, each one entering the corresponding point of Rudra's body. One type of mantra pulled Rudra's life force from its usual residence outside the body. Each being is thought to have a special place in the environment in which his or her life force resides, and dissolved it into his physical body. Another type of mantra brought the power of harming him into his own body, and yet another drove him insane. With a mantra charged with the pot.nc to tear Rudra into pieces, Vajrakilaya seized Rudra's own main hand implement, his Khatvanga trident, and with it he pierced Rudra's body and chopped it into pieces. Then, along with a mantra which gathered these bodily parts together and offered them up to Vajrakilaya's mouth, Vajrakilaya uttered "Ah la la ho" and swallowed all the pieces of the corpse without blinking an eye. In fact, these 6 mantras are the same mantras used in the practice of Vajrakilaya when we engage in the liberation of demonic forces, and this is how they first originated. Then Vajrakilaya dispersed all the members of Rudra's retinue who belonged to the class of demons. Since he had now successfully subjugated Rudra, the Buddhas of the past, present and future offered praise to Vajrakilaya in the melody of the Rakyasas. Then with their terrifying neighing, the Vajra horses Hayagriva and so on, humiliated Rudra and his retinue once and for all. Rudra had been consumed by Vajrakilaya, and through the blessing of being held in Vajrakilaya's stomach, he recalled all the forms in which he had been reborn over innumerable lifetimes. The 12,000 great kalpas of rebirths in hell, and the 6 great kalpas of rebirths as a preta. So he came to realize that this suffering was due to having let his tantric commitments degenerate. And finally he understood the inexorable karmic law of cause and effect governing virtue and negativity. At this he lamented, crying out many words of remorse and confession. These words were subsequently arranged in the form of precepts, which today are used in the rite of confession called the Lamentations and Confession of Rudra. Then Rudra emerged from Vajrakilaya's secret place, his anus, and keeping Rudra in front of him, Vajrakilaya intimidated him even further with his threat, eaning presence and bearing. Next, each member of his 8-fold retinue, the 8 classes of gods and demons, confessed and took off their heads as an offering to Vajrakilaya. At this juncture, terrified and intimidated, Rudra pleaded, "So meager has your compassion been for me that you have expelled me through your lower orifice. But now I am your servant, and from this point on I request that you show me the appropriate respect. If I transgress your orders, then let me burn in hell. I offer you my mother, sister, and female servants as your willing subjects to be at your command. I understand that I cannot be a principal member of the blazing wrathful mandala, and so do not deserve any part of the primary offering in the Ganakakra feast. However, please allow me to reside on the periphery of the mandala and grant me the leftovers that have been spat back by the Vajra master." With these words, Rudra offered his body to Vajrakilaya as a seat below his feet, focused his ears on Vajrakilaya's transmission of the pacifying teachings, and with his mind constantly regretted and confessed all the negative karma he had accumulated. Rudra's retinue also act as cushions for Vajrakilaya's retinue. For example, the 10 protectors of the directions, lying face down intertwined with their female counterparts lying on their backs, are the seats of the 10 wrathful ones. They too listened to Vajrakilaya transmit the teachings, since they were now included within the mandala. As for Rudra's residence, which was built of skulls, Vajrakilaya blessed it to become the divine palace of his own mandala. This then is the origin of the entire assembly of the deities of Vajrakilaya, as regards the residences and the beings residing within them. The reason Rudra had the good fortune to meet Vajrakilaya and to be treated in this way was because he had made contact with the secret mantra teachings 1 lifetimes before, when he received instructions from the monk Thubka Shionu. Though Rudra is now, as Mahakala, a protector of the teachings of the 1002 Buddhas of this fortunate eon, there is a prophecy that in the future he will become a Buddha himself in the subterranean world system. So this is the explanation of how at this particular point in time, Rudra was completely liberated by Vajrakilaya. However, it is only one account, and in fact there are always many more Rudras who come from the rebirths of individuals unable to keep their tantric commitments. They are reborn as malignant forces who create obstacles for secret mantra practitioners and interfere with the keeping of pure tantric samadhis. When Guru Rinpoche first granted the secret mantra teachings to his 25 principal disciples in Tibet, he gave them this transmission of Vajrakilaya, since he realized they would experience obstacles to their practice of the secret mantrayana from such malignant forces. Practitioners like us now, by practicing Vajrakilaya, will no longer be afflicted by this damsy class of harm-doers, with all their attempts to create obstacles to the practice of secret mantra and to the observance of pure tantric samadhis. The practice of Vajrakilaya as ground, path, and fruition. The ground Vajrakilaya should be understood as the primordially unborn nature of the mind, free from all discursive elaboration, within which all the Buddha bodies and primordial wisdoms are spontaneously and integrally present. The path Vajrakilaya is the vivid visualization of those 3 Buddha bodies and 5 primordial wisdoms present within the ground in the form of Vajrakilaya and his retinue of deities, here depending on the integration of skillful means and insight. There are 4 aspects to the path Vajrakilaya: the wisdom awareness fervor; second, the enlightened mind fervor, here referring to the wisdom of the completion stage; third, the immeasurable compassion fervor; fourth, the substantial fervor, which is the actual ritual item we call fervor. The wisdom awareness fervor is the coming to the fore of self-arising wisdom, which is the indivisible union of space and Rigpa awareness. This means that in our practice, this wisdom fervor must seal all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana, so that through its penetration, all distorted appearances are ultimately eradicated and we attain the Dharmakaya of non-dual wisdom. The enlightened mind fervor relates to the path of mantra, which in Mahayoga generally consists of the path of insight and the path of skillful means. Here we are concerned with the latter, when the upper gateway of the winds and the lower gateway of the Hindus are unified within the completion stage practice, the innate wisdom of great bliss emerges. This is the bodhicitta, or enlightened mind, referred to. This fervor of the enlightened mind seals our impure experiences of channels, winds, and Hindus, thereby penetrating and eradicating them. In this way, the pure Subjugation, the principal lords of the mandalas of male and female deities, comes to the fore. The immeasurable compassion fervor refers to the great compassion that never abandons a single sentient being. The fervor of immeasurable compassion seals all the 6 kinds of sentient beings, so that all the sites of cyclic existence are penetrated and eradicated, whereby we attain the Nirmankaya. The substantial fervor refers to the fervor we use as the support for our visualization 58, the actual ritual dagger arranged on our shrine along with a painting or statue of the deity Vajrakilaya. If we are able to, it is best to create the entire mandala of wood and clay, portraying each of the deities of the whole mandala, most of whom hold fervors in their hands. Otherwise, you can make a mandala of colored sand, and then using a fervor box as a support, for example a 3-legged metal stand, arrange fervors in the corresponding locations, as symbols of the deities of the mandala. These concrete supports for visualization are the main significance of the term substantial fervor. But it also extends to include the visualized deity and the deity evoked in reality through such visualizations, since both occur in dependence upon the actual fervors used as a meditative support. In the generation stage practice of Kirim, first we generate a visual image of the deity by means of the three samadhis, which is termed the Samaya-sattva, or commitment being, by then inviting the natural mandala of the deity Vajrakilaya and his retinue from the Akanista pure realm where they dwell in Symbolic form. These actual deities, known as the Chifyana-sattva, or wisdom beings, dissolve into the visualized forms and become inseparable from them. So both Samaya-sattva and Chifyana-sattva are called substantial purba, and the term is extended to cover them both. In addition to the wisdom being, the Symbolic manifestation of the deity is also called the natural purba, since it is the natural reality of the deity which the practitioner must evoke. The Samaya-sattva, or initial visualized form of the deity in the mandala, can also be called the samadhi purba, or the generation stage deity purba, as we meditate upon our very own nature as Vajrakilaya in the practice. This threefold substantial purba must penetrate grasping at ordinary perception, a penetration which eradicates all I-1 and pure discursive thoughts or negative conceptualization. So, we actualize the manifestation of phenomenal existence as the pure expression of Vajrakilaya and his Ma-1, 9 Allah of deities. This fourth, the substantial purba, refers to the purba we use as the support for our visualization, the actual ritual dagger arranged on our shrine along with a painting or statue of the deity Vajrakilaya. If we are able to, it is best to create the entire mandala of wood and clay, portraying each of the deities of the whole mandala, most of whom hold phurbas in their hands. Otherwise, you can make a mandala of colored sand, and then using an aspect of the phurba will be the main topic of discussion here, since it includes the deity of the generation stage practice, which is at the heart of the meditative process. The fruition Vajrakilaya is the primordial wisdom awareness of the mind of all the Buddhas. The reason I've made a point of discussing these different aspects of Vajrakilaya is because we tend to think of Vajrakilaya as simply the deity with 3 faces and 6 arms that we meditate on in practice. However, as you can see, in fact, it is far more than that, and includes the wisdom awareness, the enlightened mind developed in the practices of the completion stage, the immeasurable compassion developed through contemplative practice, as well as the visualization supports and deities present within the practice of the generation stage. The generation of Vajrakilaya. I shall now explain in detail the generation stage of deity practice. To begin with, in order to generate our own nature as the deity, we must actualize the 3 samadhis. These 3 samadhis are not exclusive to Vajrakilaya by any means, but are fundamental to all generation stage practices. The words used to lead the mind into these 3 samadhis are the same as those found in the Sadhana treasure revelations of Ratnalingpa, which themselves derive from the root phurba tantras. In fact, these stanzas, which belong to the beginning of the deity generation stage, are shared by all phurba treasures as the means for generating the 3 meditative absorptions, or samadhis, Dorje Troo, Xie Dangcho, Tson Chen Ngompo Che Barwa Namke Kildu Tikle Shasokgi, Goru Sharwa Dang Nyingi Kildu Gompa Ja. Literally, the wrathful Vajra cuts through anger. The blue hum blazes ever higher as the great indication, arising as a bindu in the center of the sky. Dawning in the gateway of its life force, I must meditate on it at the center of my heart. If we separate out these lines to show how they correspond to the 3 samadhis and the generation of the palace as the support, they are as follows. The samadhi of suchness, Dorje Troo, the wrathful Vajra. The samadhi of total manifestation, Xie Dangcho, cuts through anger. The causal samadhi, Tsonchen Gonpo Barwa Namke Kildu Tiklesha, the blue hum blazes ever higher as the great indication, arising as a Hindu in the center of the sky. The generation of the palace as the support, Sokji Go Rushawa Dang Nyingi Kildu Gompaja, dawning in the gateway of its life force. I must meditate on it at the center of my heart. Wrathful Vajra refers to the first samadhi, the samadhi of suchness, meaning the meditation on the nature of emptiness. In general, Vajra has 3 meanings. I, unborn emptiness. 2, diamonds, which are known as substantial Vajras. And 3, the Vajras or scepters used along with bells in Tantric rituals, which are known as symbolic substantial Vajras. However, in this context, the primary meaning of Vajra is unborn emptiness. The term wrathful usually means springing from anger. Here, the one who is angry is the Vajra itself, the unborn emptiness. At whom is the Vajra angry? The object of anger here is our inveterate grasping at concrete identities in conceptually apprehended dualistic experience. How does the Vajra express its anger? Darkness is completely absent within the fiery nature of the sun. In fact, it is its antithesis. Darkness can never resist the rising of the sun and can only fade away. In the same way, when the unborn nature of emptiness is realized, then its antithesis, dualistic conceptuality, cannot resist its anger and dissolves. To sum up, the main point of the first samadhi is that when we meditate on our own nature as the wisdom deity, first of all we must enter into an awareness of the nature of reality, which is the unborn nature of emptiness, and remain in that state. Subsequently, we will also come to understand that the deity's own nature is nothing other than emptiness. 1. The second samadhi, the samadhi of total manifestation, refers to the experience of appearances rising out of the state of emptiness, which happens in two distinct contexts. First, during the formal, contemplative state of meditative equipoise, when we are focused principally on one pointed immersion in emptiness, so that any visions of radiant light are withdrawn within its expanse. This is the samadhi of suchness. However, when the appearance of luminously radiant light as empty forms, which derives from completion stage practice, is emphasized, our consciousness is then integrated with them, and these visionary forms intensify and spread in extent. When radiant light or luminosity is emphasized in meditative equipoise instead of emptiness, it is termed the samadhi of total manifestation. Second, when we rise out of formal meditation and enter the post-meditation state of awareness, the dimension of emptiness recedes into the background, relatively speaking, and appearances are highlighted once more. So we become focused again on all the illusory beings who have as yet failed to realize emptiness, and an intense compassion wells up towards them and their plight. Compassion flows naturally from the realization of emptiness. This also is termed the samadhi of total manifestation. In the first case, the manifestation is of empty forms of radiant light, while in the second, the manifestation is both of the sentient beings and of our own compassion towards them. Coin passion, the thought of bringing benefit to others, will eliminate any kind of anger or aggression just as naturally as the sensation of heat eliminates the sensation of cold. So compassion has the effect of naturally calming anger, which is what the first line is referring to when it says that the wrathful Vajra cuts through anger. The third samadhi, the causal samadhi, refers to the blue syllable hum, which transforms into the mandala of the supporting palace that is the residence, and the supported deities that inhabit it. So the letter hum is the seed or foundation which generates the mandala. The blue hum blazes ever higher as the great indication, arising as a bindu in the center of the sky. Blue refers to this syllable hum, which blazes as it emits countless rays of light in the process of transformation. Great indicates that its essence is the 5 primordial wisdoms, and indication points to it generating the Ma'aryu Ayala itself. Since it is a seed, it is referred to as a bindu, a term whose meanings include seed and sexual fluid, and it arises within the center of reality itself, dharmata, like the sky, beyond any sense of periphery or center. In brief, the indivisible, non-dual integration of the emptiness of the first samadhi and the compassion of the second samadhi becomes the letter hum. It should also be considered as the essence of the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas. In terms of the actual visualization, we begin by contemplating a blue hum. In the middle of empty space, we no longer have any perception of our own body. The hum then alternates between radiating and absorbing rays of light. When the rays of light stream out, they make offerings to all the Buddhas of the 10 directions and dispel all the obscurations of living beings. When they are reabsorbed, all the attainments are achieved, both ordinary and supreme. Then the hum itself transforms into the residents and deities of the mandala. The 3 samadhis are also expressed as bringing the 3 kayas onto the path. 2 points in the practice at the beginning of the evocation of the deity, when we actualize the first samadhi on the nature of emptiness, and then also in the conclusion when we dissolve the deity into the nature of emptiness, are termed tinaking, the fruitional dharmakaya of the Buddha into the path. The second samadhi on compassion and illusion-like manifestations is termed making the fruitional Symbolic of the Buddha into the path. The third samadhi on the cause, as well as the meditation upon the details of the deity and the complete arrangement of the mandala, are termed making the fruitional Nirnat-lakaya of the Buddha into the path. In this way, the resultant Buddhahood of the three kayas is brought directly right into the path. The final two lines then refer to the actual generation of the palace and deities of the mandala, while the preceding lines focused on the hum itself. Dawning in the gateway of its life force, I must meditate on it at the center of my heart. Life force refers to the vitality of the letter hum, which brings forth the vital palace and resident deities out of its energy or gateway. The center of the heart has three connotations. I, the initial visualization of the hum at the beginning of the transformative process, anust. Be a vivid visualization with the full commitment of our heart and mind in order to achieve perfect clarity. 2. Furthermore, the hum, as the non-dual integration of emptiness and compassion, pervades all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana as their heart core, and they are never anything other than it. We need to contemplate with the firm belief that this is the inner reality of the hum. Finally, when the deities have actually taken form, the central deity, which is ourself, has a wisdom deity within its own heart, in the heart of which stands the syllable hum, known as the samadhisattva, or samadhi being. The samadhisattva forms a triad along with the sarnaya-sattva and jnana-sattva, the visualization of the palace. Before actually generating the deities in the process of contemplation, first we must generate their residence in the form of a celestial palace. We begin with the base that supports it, and which is constituted of the 5 elements, arranged one by one on top of each other. Initially, out of the letter hum emanates a syllable, the seed syllable of the energy of space, from which manifests the dark blue, star-shaped mandala of space, consisting of 2 interlocking triangles known as dharmadaya, the source of all phenomena. This syllable, as well as all the syllables described below, emanate in sequence out of the syllable hum itself. Now we visualize the blue syllable yam, the seed syllable of wind, from which emerges the bow-shaped blue of wind. Upon that appears a red syllable ram, the seed syllable of fire, which transforms into the triangular red mandala of fire. Upon that we visualize a white syllable bam, the seed syllable of water, which transforms into the spherical white mandala of water. Upon that we visualize the seed syllable sum, the seed syllable of earth, which transforms into the square-shaped golden mandala of earth. Then we visualize the seed syllable kem, the seed syllable of the central cosmic Mount Meru, out of which, as this is a wrathful mandala, Mount Meru manifests as a heap of skeletons. Upon that we visualize a seed syllable bh rum, the seed syllable for the celestial palace, which emanates a palace of stacked white skulls. And so we visualize the palace with its proportions and characteristics exactly as they are described in our own specific practice text. The essence of the palace is wisdom, and its appearance should be visualized as the self's manifestation of wisdom, the visualization of the deities. The visualization of the deities residing within the palace, and the details of their exact number, appearance, and so on, will vary from one sadhana to another. For example, in the case of the principal deity Vajrakilaya, many different manifestations are described with regard to his faces, arms, and hand implements. It is stated in the secret Phurba Tantra that Vajrakilaya is to be meditated on as having 1,000 heads, 1,000 arms, and 10 million eyes, which is how Vajrakilaya manifested at the time of slaying and liberating Rudra. However, in the Nirvana Tantra of Vajrakilaya, Vajrakilaya is visualized as having 9 heads and 18 arms, another form in which Vajrakilaya manifested at the time of slaying and liberating Rudra. Then in the Root Tantra of Vajrakilaya, entitled The Root Tantra, Wrathful Vajra, he is described as having 3 faces and 6 arms. So when, as in many sadhana rituals, we meditate on our own nature in the form of Vajrakilaya with 3 faces and 6 arms, it is based upon this text. In the 12 Kilaya Tantra, a form of Vajrakilaya is described with 1 face and 2 arms. This is the form in which Vajrakilaya appears in the Gurukukma Vajrakilaya treasure of Khenpo Jigme Puntsok. And so we can say that this Tantra is the source of his revelation. Given this variable, indeterminate nature of the manifestations of the deities, I shall not go into detailed descriptions which can be found in your own particular sadhana manual. For the time being, I will just briefly sketch out the essentials as found in the Phurba tradition of Ratna Lingpa. Inside the celestial palace, we meditate on the seat of the principal deity and the other deities. Generally, at the base of the mandala, we visualize an iron wheel with 10 spokes. Unlike the typical wheel in the mandalas of peaceful deities, shaped like a bicycle wheel with spokes as in the classical depictions of the Wheel of Dharma, the wheel in the wrathful mandalas is a circle with the spokes being triangles that protrude from its outer perimeter, so that it resembles a cog more than a bicycle wheel. In general, the triangular shape is associated with wrathful deities and spherical shapes with peaceful ones. At the hub of the wheel is a lotus and a solar disk, on which the principal rudra pair, male and female, lie in union as mentioned above, forming a seat. On top of this stand the 3-faced and 6-armed Vajrakilaya and his consort. They represent the non-dual expression of the expanse of emptiness and primordial wisdom awareness. Outside the hub, in the 4 directions, are the supreme suns of the 4 types. At the perimeter of the wheel, on top of each of the 10 spokes, lie the individual protectors of the directions, male and female, also forming seats, on top of which appear the 10 corresponding male and female wrathful ones, emanated from the principal deity in order to subdue the protectors of the directions. These are harukas of wisdom. Also, on top of the seats formed by the bodies of the protectors of the directions, to the right and left of each of the wrathful ones and their consorts are 1 male and 1 female Traman. Traman are beings with the bodies of gods and the heads of either birds or carnivorous animals. All the females are bird-headed and termed executioners or winged ones, while all the males are carnivore-headed and termed devourers or fanged ones. The males can also be referred to as attendants, in which case the females by themselves are referred to as Traman. The manner in which these deities first emerge is that 10 orbs of light are emitted from the secret places, the genitals of Vajrakilaya and his consort, themselves the union of emptiness and awareness. These orbs of light shine above, below, and in the 4 principal and 4 intermediate directions, the light then transforming into the 10 wrathful ones, male and female. The male wrathful ones then emanate the 10 male devourers, while the female wrathful ones emanate the 10 female executioners. Outside the perimeter of the wheel are the 16 Phurba protectors, and beyond this are the 4 gateways in the cardinal directions, which are the entrances to the mandala. These are guarded by the 4 female gatekeepers, whose seats are the male and female Gandharvas, and so on. Their functions are to summon, bind, subdue, and drive crazy. The root deities are Vajrakilaya and his consort, the supreme suns, the male and female wrathful ones, and the 4 female gate guardians. The branch deities, or further emanations, are the 20 Traman and the 16 Phurba protectors. This visualization of the mandala and the seats within the mandala is called the supporting aspect of the mandala, since it supports the deities who take their places upon it. The deities in Tum are referred to as, in which case they correspond to the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activity. In fact, their number is not definite or determined. In some mandalas, there are as many as 108, in others as few as 1. In some Vajrakilaya rituals, they are termed Phurba of approach, which refers to the first of the 4 stages of visualization practice. Initially, by accumulating many recitations of the mantra, you gradually gain the potency of the mantra, and so you are able to activate these deities. Once their potency has reached its threshold, then you can move on to engaging in enlightened activities, such as liberating and so on, based upon these deities. Since the mantra accumulation approaches these deities as their potency is gradually activated, they are called the Phurba of approach. Alternatively, they can be referred to as the substantial Phurba mandalas. This is a name which expresses how the Supreme Suns embody all of the mandala's deities and blessings, which are compared to substances in the general sense of the word, referring to a collection of things. The upper parts of the bodies of the Supreme Sons are sometimes described as having 1 head and 4 arms, and sometimes as having 3 heads and 6 arms. However, the bottom parts of their bodies are always the 3-edged blade of a furba. Each of the other deities of the mandala, including Vajrakilaya, holds a single furba, but not the Supreme Sons, since they themselves are furbas. These furbas symbolize the achievement of enlightened activities. The term sons indicates that they were emanated from the heart of the deity and his consort. Actually, all the deities of the mat Titi Lala are contained completely within the body of each of these 4 Supreme Sons, who are also the principal performers of the 4 enlightened supported. While this has been a brief outline of the presentation given in the Terma Revelation of Ratna Lingpa, you should meditate on the different facets of the mandala given in the Sadhana manual of your own particular tradition. The Supreme Sons of the 4 types. Out of all the sons emanated from the enlightened heart of Vajrakilaya, the supreme ones are those of the 4 types. In other traditions, these are presented as 5 activities: pacifying, expanding, controlling, and fierce. So they are truly supreme among all the sons of Vajrakilaya, as they both embody the entire mandala and execute enlightened activity to perfection. Vajrakilaya and his consort themselves are also supreme, but they are not sons, since they have not been born from anyone. The 10 male and female wrathful ones are sons, since they derive from the secret places of Vajrakilaya and his consort, but they are not supreme sons. The Traman are emanations, but neither sons nor supreme. The 3 elements of deity generation practice. When we visualize ourselves as the deity in the form of Vajrakilaya, we must apply the 3 essential points of any deity generation practice. I, clarity. 2, pure recollection. 3, divine or firm pride. These 3 are essential elements of the practice, without which it will be incomplete. I, clarity. Clarity signifies a clear visualization without any fogginess or roughness. However, a visualization that merely lacks non-clarity is not sufficient, as it must also be so precise that we have a vivid awareness of details as minute as the white and black elements of the deity's eyes. This is because we are performing generation stage practice in order to purify our impure perception. The degree to which our direct perception of the deity and all its many details is clear and vivid will indicate the extent of our ability to transform ordinary perception so that it no longer appears. 2, pure recollection. This signifies the necessity for understanding the various visible appearances of the deities, their color, hand implements, and so on, as symbolic elements, which point to the pure factors of reality 118 and transcendent wisdom. In fact, it is actually reality and transcendent wisdom which take on this vivid form of the deity. We must meditate with this perspective firmly in our mind. Otherwise, if we meditate thinking the bodies of the deities are similar to the appearances of ordinary living beings, our meditation will become a means of creating a rudra rather than a deity. Below, I shall give a detailed explanation of pure recollection as it applies to the appearance of the principal deity Vajrakilaya and the main members of his retinue, such as the 10 Herukas and their consorts. 3, divine pride. The 3rd element is the divine pride of being convinced that you are in reality the wisdom deity. There are 2 reasons behind the need for such firm pride. The first is that in the context of the view of the secret Mantrayana, we must realize that all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana are primordially pure. The second is that after we have visualized our own Samaya-sattva form of the deity, the actual wisdom deity from the Akarnistha Pure Land must approach and dissolve into that contrived image, and we must therefore have a resolute belief in it. If we lack this resolute pride, then we won't be able to divest ourselves of impure clinging and attachment. If instead we think that we are not in fact the deity, but it is all only imagination, then this will neither be authentic generation phase practice, nor will it be able to act as an antidote to ordinary impure perceptions. In generating the deity, initially we meditate in the first 2 samadhis, on emptiness and compassion. So the visualization of the deities and mandalas all takes place in dependence upon reality, dhammata, which is the union of emptiness and compassion. No matter which practice we are doing, the principal deity, the retinue, the celestial palace, the seats, and the sequentially arranged elements at the base of the mandalas all originate from emptiness and continue to be, in their true nature, nothing other than emptiness. So there are both the appearance of the manifest mandalas in all its vivid details, including ourselves as the principal deity, and its empty nature, which signifies that it has arisen from the expanse of reality beyond all discursive elaboration. Integrating the appearances and their essential nature into an indivisible union, free from any mental fixations, is the completion stage of the practice. Thus, the practice becomes what is known as the non-dual practice of generation and completion. Without this awareness of emptiness, our perception of the deity will become an object of grasping, and in our belief in its concrete reality, we will lapse into the extreme of eternal ism. This explains why it is imperative that all these appearances be subsequently dissolved in the dissolution phase back into their own luminous emptiness. However, if you have genuinely divested yourself of all grasping, then there is no longer any need for an explicit dissolution, which is why Khenpo Jigfun's Ferber treasure does not say that the dissolution of the deity is imperative. It says, the appearance of the deity, without dissolving, free from grasping, relaxes within the sameness of Dharmata. In fact, we need to maintain a sense of the vivid vision of the deity constantly, including during the post-meditative state and throughout all our usual activities after the formal meditative session. However, as a general rule, first we need to dissolve the contemplative presence of the deity into non-referential emptiness at the end of the session, and then regenerate the appearance once again before we conclude. With this re-emergent sense of the deity, we also ensure that we avoid the danger of lapsing into the extreme of nihilism through immersion into emptiness. This is not something that pertains only to Vajrakilaya practice, but applies in general to all deity generation techniques. Pure recollection. Now I will explain pure recollection in more detail as it relates specifically to the chief deity, Vajrakilaya, and the principal members of his retinue. Vajrakilaya's appearance in union with a consort, which in Tibetan is referred to as Yabyam, literally father-mother, symbolizes the non-duality of the expanse of emptiness and the expression of primordial wisdom. We could also say that ultimately the non-duality of emptiness and primordial wisdom appears as the Yabyam deities. The deity's blue color symbolizes unchanging reality, while his three faces symbolize the three bodies of a Buddha and the three states of thorough liberation, 126. Vajrakilaya's 6 arms symbolize the 6 transcendent perfections, while his legs represent the 4 legs of miraculous transformation. In terms of hand implements, he holds a 9-pronged vajra, symbolizing all the 9 vehicles on the path to liberation, as well as a 5-pronged vajra, symbolizing the 5 primordial wisdoms. The blazing fireball of wisdom 128 symbolizes his total incineration of emotional distortion, while his 3-pointed Katyanga trident symbolizes the annihilation of the 3 poisons from their roots. Finally, with his 2 lower hands, Vajrakilaya rolls a Ferber called Tu, the Mount Meru Purba, on account of its massive size, which symbolizes his subjugation of all malevolent forces. There are 3 clumps of ashes on his forehead, from a corpse burned in the charnel ground, 3 drops of blood on his 2 cheekbones, and the bridge of his nose, and 3 streaks of human fat on his throat. These 3 substances are applied like makeup to the bodies of all wrathful deities, not just Vajrakilaya. The same is true of the 3 types of garments and ornaments detailed below, which together with the 3 substances, jointly symbolize all the enlightened qualities of the ground, path, and fruition. The 3 types of garments of a wrathful deity are a wet elephant skin draped over the upper part of the body, a flayed human skin draped over the shoulders, and a tiger skin skirt wrapped around the lower part of the body. The ornaments are made of skulls and serpents. Vajrakilaya wears a crown of dry skulls, as well as a very long necklace hanging down below the waist that is made of dry skulls, moist skulls, and freshly severed heads. These 2 skull ornaments, along with all the serpent ornaments, considered as a single set, constitute the 3 types of ornaments. The serpent ornaments are as follows. Vajrakilaya's hair is tied up with white serpents. He has yellow serpents as earrings, a red serpent as a necklace, green serpents as bracelets and anklets, and a black serpent necklace as long as the human head necklace, which hangs down below the waist. All of the wrathful deities wear these ornaments, which are called the 8 charnel ground ornaments. The 3 substances, the 3 types of garments, and 2 types of ornaments, skulls and serpents. Vajrakilaya and the 10-1 Nele wrathful ones also appear in the 8-fold attire of the glorious ones, which symbolizes their eradication of the 8 classes of gods, cannibals, and spirits. Their hair is a tangled mess. It has a half vajra as its top knot. Each one of the wrathful Herukas wears a silken diadem with blue and red strips hanging down on either side. They have vajra wings that are indestructible but can destroy everything. They wear rhino hide armor. They are in intimate sexual union with their consort, who becomes as an ornament. They are also like steel in the brilliance of their appearance, while they are surrounded by an aura of the fire of primordial wisdom. The wrathful deities have 9 styles or demeanors, characteristic of their manifestation, consisting of 3 sets of 3, corresponding to the body, speech, and 1 mind, respectively. Every wrathful deity has all 9 styles, though they do not necessarily display all simultaneously. The 3 corresponding to the body are seductive, heroic, and repulsive, which correspond to the 3 poisons of desire, hatred, and ignorance, respectively. The 3 corresponding to speech are their laughter, which sounds like ha ha ha, and hi hi hi, malicious threats like kill and strike, and terrifying roars like 1,000 dragons roaring simultaneously. The 3 corresponding to mind are compassion that nurtures ignorant beings, craving to tame wrathfully all incorrigible beings, and the serenity of never wavering from the expanse of reality. To sum up, while we visualize the wrathful deity, Vajrakilaya appearing as the supreme wrathful deity, the universal king, controlling the 3 states of existence and suppressing the 3 realms with his splendor, we should simultaneously keep in mind all the symbolic meanings that have been explained above as pure recollection. Now I shall explain pure recollection as it applies to the 10 male and female wrathful ones, the 10 executioners, the 10 devourers, the gatekeepers, and the other members of the retinue. The male and female wrathful ones, the 10 executioners, and the 10 devourers all symbolize the purification of the 10 non-virtues, the antidotes to the 10 protectors of the directions in Rudra's retinue that need to be tamed, and the essence of the 10 perfections. The term traman, applied to the executioners and devourers, means something fastened together like fastening ornaments or studding small gems onto a golden cup. Just so, the heads of various animals and birds are studded onto the bodies of gods, symbolizing the inseparable union of the expanse of reality and wisdom. All these deities hold vajras and skull cups filled with blood, which symbolize emptiness and wisdom. The deities also hold the hand implements of the 10 protectors of the directions, which symbolizes their victory over the unruly Samaya breakers. Finally, each one of the wrathful deities rolls a furba between their hands, which symbolizes their ability to engage in unobstructed accomplishment of enlightened activities. This completes the explanation of the way in which we visualize and meditate on the deities. The 5 empowerments of the 5 Buddha families. After visualizing the deities, the Sanaya Sattvas, we generally invite the wisdom deities from the Pure Land, and they come into the space in front of us. We then request them to take their places in and as us, so that the wisdom deities, the Jifyana Sattvas, become inseparable from the Samaya Sattvas. Then we make offerings and praises to them as specified in our own Sadhana manual, and finally we recite the mantra of the deity, which will be discussed below. In some systems, just before the mantra recitation, we project the Jifyana Sattva back out into the space in front of us, so separating the wisdom being from the commitment being, who then look back and forth at one another. In this case, we imagine that the mantra is projected continuously out of our own mouth, ourselves as the Samaya Sattva, and into the mouth of the deity, and then circulates by descending through their body, out of their genitals into our own, and then out of our mouth again. We keep up this circulation throughout the ritual, and then when the mantra recitation is completed, the wisdom being is reabsorbed back into us. In general, however, the wisdom being simply dissolves into us and stays there throughout the practice. You need to follow your own particular sadhana manual. An additional phase prior to the invitation of the deities is specified in many of the continuously trans-initiated traditions of karma, namely the performance of the five-fold empowerment, though this is often not included in the term treasure traditions. So I shall describe how we perform the empowerment should it be required. We begin by inviting all the Buddhas of the 10 directions as embodied by the victors of the 5 Buddha families, who then appear in Yab-yum form in the sky above our head. From there, the 5 Buddhas, as the empowerment deities, transmit the fourfold empowerment to us. The first empowerment is the fivefold vase empowerment. From the east, Aksobhya transmits the water empowerment. From the south, Padmasambhava transmits the crown ornament empowerment. From the west, Amitabha transmits the Vajra empowerment. From the north, Amoghasiddhi transmits the bell empowerment. And from the center, Vairocana transmits the name E1 empowerment. In terms of our visual experience of this, each Buddha touches our head with the respective empowerment substance 150 to confer the empowerment. For the N-name empowerment, the substance is the Vajra and bell together, while name refers to our obtaining a special name in this context. The second empowerment is the secret empowerment, which is obtained by visualizing the red and white bodhicitta nectar flowing from the union of the 5 male and female Buddhas into the crown of our head, and so pervading our body. The third empowerment is the insight empowerment, in which all of the E1 empowering deities melt into light and dissolve into us through the crown of our head. As the bodhicitta and light of the deities dissolve into us, we experience the coming to the fore of the wisdom of bliss and emptiness, which is the transmission of the fourth empowerment, the verbal or world empowerment. Then the 5 Buddhas re-emerge in distinct form and ascend up our body to our head, where they take up position as a crown on our head, which we then consider we are wearing throughout the mantra recitation. In order to seal our ordinary body, speech and mind with their enlightened counterparts, we visualize a white 0M at the crown of all the deities, a red AH at their throat, and a blue hum at their heart. From these 3 syllables, light of the same color emanates outwards to the 10 directions, and then the essence of the body of all the Buddhas in the form of Vairocana takes up residence on the crown of our head. The essence of their speech in the form of Amitabha takes up residence in our throat, and the essence of their mind in the form of Amitabha takes up residence in our heart. We need to visualize all 3 of these throughout the practice. At this point, then, we invite all the deities of the mandala from the Akanistha pure realm. We request them to take up residence. We visualize ourselves prostrating to them. We make offerings and praises. And then finally, we are ready to begin the recitation of the mantra. The mantra recitation. There are 4 facets of the presence of mantras, which are common to all Buddhist mantras. The presence of mantras as being reality, dharmata in essence. The presence of mantras as the nature of phenomenal appearances. The presence of mantras as being blessings. And the presence of mantras as intrinsically having a potent force. The first refers to the essence of mantras being primordially empty. The second refers to how the various syllables of the mantra appear, even while it remains empty. The third refers to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas blessing the mantras as the essence of the deities. The fourth refers to each mantra having its own specific potencies, which are the power to accomplish whatever attainments or siddhis we desire, ordinary or supreme. If we recite the mantra with the realization that the wisdom deity and the syllables of the mantra are primordially indivisible, then with that blessing, our recitation of the mantra will result in the ability to accomplish unobstructedly both supreme and ordinary attainments. So the mantra has this power to produce results, just like a potent medicine can cure an illness. While the first 2 facets apply to all syllables and all mantras, the latter 2 are attributes unique to the mantras deriving from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. When a form body, a rupakaya with faces and hands, manifests from the dharmakaya of the Buddhas, we think of it as a deity. In just the same way, the mantra takes form out of the essence of the dharmakaya, and we should think of it also as a deity. So the sound of the mantra is the deity, and the deity is the mantra. Recitation of mantras is especially powerful when we realize the triple indivisibility of the wisdom body, the mantra, and reality or dharmata. The mantra of the deity Vajrakilaya is as follows: Om Vajrakilaya Sarva Bignana Bam Hum Fat. Its recitation has three divisions: the extensive, intermediate, and concise. The concise is the 9-syllable mantra Om Vajrakilaya Hum Fat, where it seems that the 0 is not counted as part of the 9 syllables. The intermediate is the 13-syllable mantra Om Vajrakilaya Dizahum Bam Ho Hum Fat. The extensive is the following: 0 Vajrakilaya Sarva Bignana Bam Hum Fat. The different Vajrakilaya traditions vary in terms of which of these they include. Explanation of the mantra. I will now explain each of the syllables of the mantra one by one. Om signifies the 5 kayas and the 5 primordial wisdoms. Vajra signifies the uncompounded nature of the 3 times, past, present, and future. Kil signifies the energization of the deity and the fervor. Kilaya Sarva signifies piercing with the fervor, signifies all the enemies and hindering demons. Bignana signifies suppressing the negative forces. Bam and Ho-Ti, these 2 syllables together, mean to overpower or bring under our control. Fat signifies liberating the negative forces. It is also taught that all of the deities in the Vajrakilaya mandala are contained within the syllables of this mantra. Om, the principal male deity, Vajrakilaya himself. Vajra, the principal female deity. Kale, the 10 male wrathful ones of wisdom. Li, the 10 female wrathful ones of space. Ki, the fanged ones of skillful means. La, the winged ones of insight. Ye, the supreme fervor sons. Hum, the 4 attendant gatekeepers. Sarva, the gathering of all the deities of the mandala. Big, the enemies and hindering demons. Nana, the suppressing of the enemies and hindering demons. Bam, overpowering or bringing under control. Hum, destroying. Fat, the completion of the enlightened activity of liberating. So this single mantra embodies the secret mantras of all the deities. With the recitation of this mantra, all 4 enlightened activities, pacifying and so on, are accomplished. This is why we should enunciate the mantra carefully and accurately. When we come to the end of our mantra recitation in a given session, we should recite 3 times the garland of vowels and consonants, the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, and the mantra of interdependent origination. The point of this is to increase the potency of the mantra as well as to erase the negative consequences of any mistakes we may have made in the recitation. Concluding phase. When we conclude a meditation session so as to counteract our tendency to fall into the extreme of eternalism, we should dissolve the deity in the completion stage. This is done by first performing a final set of offerings and praises to the deities, then requesting them to depart, and finally dissolving our own visualization of the Samaya Sattva. Then, to avoid the extreme of nihilism, we re-emerge as the deity and clarify our visualization. Finally, we seal the entire practice with a dedication, aspirational prayers, and a prayer for auspiciousness. Afterward, these days, Vajrakilaya has become to some extent well known in the West. Although you may find the details presented here somewhat overwhelming, if you are a practitioner of Vajrakilaya, it is crucial that you be familiar with these teachings. The reason I have given this teaching is to plant a seed within you, in the hope that in the future it will bring benefit to practitioners of Vajrakilaya in the West. In fact, Vajrakilaya can be explained in an even more extensive fashion, and perhaps in the future you could invite a Tibetan teacher able to do so. For the time being, I have taught you what I can, to the best of my ability.